This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and now Twitter channels with Rara Blue. I got your name right? It's Rara.
Yeah. Hi.
And we're talking to you from Belgium, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's cool because that's what's really interesting about this kind of show is that we get to talk to people from around the world. We've been doing it since 2018, and we just want to actually introduce one of our sponsors before we get into the full interview. And we actually got a video to show, like a preview of her new work. But we've got this iOS app that you can get from iOS App Store, from iTunes, or from the Android store at www.newsly.me. And they are an app that reads the news back to you in a natural voice. So if you use our coupon code GHOST 2021, and that's still valid, you get 1 month free premium subscription. So we stop scrolling and start listening to the news so you can multitask. And that's a cool thing to do. And what we're going to do now is bring up your link. It's going to be running through the whole show. It's got like your Destroyed Kid hyperlink, hyperfollow link to your new track, Broad Minds, coming up, right?
Yes.
So the other thing we like to do is actually show people the before we actually get into the interview. And I guess when you're somebody that knows a fan might be showing up there. We have a comment. So yeah, we've got it queued up, and we'll put you on mute, and then we'll come back. So then when we come back, we're going to do a full kind of behind the music interview. That's our style, to talk about like where an artist is coming from the songwriting style. And if that's cool, I'm going to play the video and put you on mute, and then we'll come back. Okay?
Yes, let's go.
I'm living, I'm dying, I'm burning, I'm pulling to you. And see how the lightning, and see how the fighting all over joy. So if you're ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. Ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. What you want. So if you're ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. Ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. What you want. Stand up, fight the time to shine much brighter than the dawn. Stories stated long gone overrated, telling times of our life. So if you're ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. Ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. What you want. So if you're ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. Ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. What you want. So if you're ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. Ready for it, come get it. I know just what you want. What you want.
So we're back.
Yes.
I like the bass. You did describe your music as kind of bass heavy, and I do love that bass.
Yes, yes, that's true.
And
Um,
that's a beautiful video. So who directed that?
Thank you. It's not actually ready yet. This is only the teaser, and
Hmm.
this video is gonna come out on 1st of March,
Hmm.
and it's actually made by some Estonian girls who are really talented. One is Anett Narusberg, another is Carol Alice Tõnisse, and they are responsible for this video. And I'm super excited, and like really, they have what I really like about their work is that they have this like way of thinking that is not so like you
Typical.
know like so obvious, or like
Yeah.
I like that they like to create something that is a bit different.
Yeah, that's the
So
one
yeah.
thing I do miss from the early MTV. Like I'm 54, right? And when MTV first started, bands would just go and just film themselves in the studio. Then you
Hmm.
actually started getting film directors, and then you saw
Hmm.
like the Duran Duran videos where they actually had a film director that did little mini movies, right?
Hmm.
And then you had other directors started coming in, like not necessarily following the song. They would go and interpret
Yeah.
the song and do what film directors do, right? They would go and come up with all kind. So I do like miss that because a lot of things today are kind of obvious. They just don't try to do something unique. There was a
Yeah.
period back in the 80s when it first started where there were a lot of directors that tried what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
and that was more fun for me. But so what I like to ask as an artist, because I'm an artist myself, is like, well, when did you first get into music? Like, what age do you remember first wanting to get into music?
That is a really interesting story because I don't think that I remember ever like wanting to get into it, but I was into it before I even realized. I was put into this children's music school when I was 2 months old. So obviously I was still a baby and I couldn't even really realize what I was doing. But when I was 6, I started my piano lessons. And so when I was 8, I remember I had these first moments where I was really like alone in the room behind the piano, and I was harmonizing on top of what I was playing. And I remember this as the first time that I really had like this spark light up inside
Yeah.
of me.
So you
But
started to actually maybe write your own type of stuff, not just learning the songs that like everybody starts. Like I started on piano in woodwinds,
mhm,
and I had to play in classical and jazz bands and kind of build up my talent. And then eventually, my musical taste kicked in, and then
yeah,
I'm like, oh, I like the Who, I like Zeppelin, I like jazz. It's like, what if
mhm,
I start taking the things I like and learn taking my instrument? At first, like a clarinet, it's hard to write on. So then I
mhm,
learned piano because
mhm.
it's like piano was like, to me and guitar are the writing instruments, right? So if
Yeah,
you're going to write a song, being a piano player, that you can write the whole thing, and then a guitar
yeah.
player, you can do the same thing. So, so is that like, was that an idea to learn piano to do that, or just learned because you wanted to go to a conservatory, you wanted to get real serious?
No, really, like for me, I grew up with the music and choir singing and this type of music. And I had this private singing teachers, and I was like a competitive singer as a kid.
Hmm.
So it naturally came that I also went to study piano. But the thing of also when I was 8, it wasn't about me starting to songwrite necessarily. It was about me understanding that I have this thing in my heart that I need to channel through music, the way that I could like um, put my feelings into my music. That was the thing that I discovered back then. But music was always a hobby.
Hmm.
I think I grew up in a very like rational family in that sense that music was never like a career option. So conservatory was never in my mind that at that time. It was
Yeah.
always just something like a release for me, something that I really felt passionate about, but I never took it as an option until I figured out that I should take it as an option because I just feel so strongly for it that I can't really do anything else about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what I find is like I interview a lot of emerging or indie, kind of outside the mainstream writers, songwriters. That's
Mm,
been my focus. Is I primarily focus on singer songwriters, just because to me, growing up in the '70s, it was the age of albums, of vinyl and
mm,
singer songwriters. You know, you like listen to James Taylor and Carole King, and then all the Motown writers like Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson and the Funk Brothers. It was just the whole idea is songwriting to me was just fantastic. You know, the idea that you could express all kinds of emotion
mm,
through music, and being somebody who was into like orchestral instruments, I just thought it was like it's very powerful when you can take your feelings and express them in music, because it's like sometimes it's not words and sometimes it's just like the chord changes or
yeah,
the just the sound of it. You can create sadness or you can make people happy with a drum beat. It's just I thought that that was just a fantastic thing, and I wanted to be part of it, whether I made money or not. I was
yeah,
like, I just wanted to do it, and it seems like you had this kind of fire that is the
yeah.
same thing, right?
I very much believe that art is feeling put into a form. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's a sound, if it's actual material, if it's like a sculpture, for example, or is it painting. The main like reason for art is that it makes us feel something. If it doesn't, then that would I would say that that is bad art. But if it makes you passionately angry at it, or like
Yeah.
it makes you feel or connect to some memories in your life, then that is what it's about. And also that as an artist, that's the thing that you want to create, is that you put your emotions into this whatever you're creating.
Yeah, I think what I find is music. I was watching a lot of documentaries because I do these type of interviews, and there was
Mm-hmm.
this really interesting documentary about George Martin, the producer from the Beatles, like the fifth Beatle, and he was talking about I could have recorded the Beatles like they sounded in Berlin and just be like a live act, but then I decided I like Monet as a painter. He was saying this in the interview, and I like the idea of a sound painting, which means I can in the studio, I can create colors and all kinds of sound painting kind of concepts that you can't do right live. That because you
Yeah.
can do backward tape loops, you can do all this layering, you can do all this effect chaining. That the idea of a sound painting was very
Yeah.
appealing to me, because then that kind of merges physical art with music, and that's always seems to happen. That
Yeah.
now that we have video and we have all these other things on stage, we have like LED systems that artists can kind of combine visuals
Mm-hmm.
with their music. But I think music without even a visual invokes this kind of sound painting, like a film,
Yeah.
like a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I always felt, that's really something that's important about the art form. um,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, so when did you realize that you had this talent and you wanted to start actually crafting your own songs? Because there's a lot of people that become studio musicians, they become classical musicians. They
Yeah.
play with other people. They don't write the material. They can actually play with bands, but they don't write their own stuff. So what made you want to be a singer-songwriter?
I think I just have a loud mouth and I have a lot to say, you know. So that's probably what was the main thing, that I really wanted to get my message across. It wasn't just about the music itself, but I really felt like I want to speak out, like I want to empower people. I want to speak about the things that matter to me, and maybe they also matter to some other people. And that's why I really felt like I had this urge to put it in my music. And also the things that I go through and all these types of things, I get this sort of release while I make my own music. So that's definitely the reason why I feel more as a creator rather than just like following a sheet note and
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like a lot of it's really interesting because a lot of times I've actually talked to singer-songwriters and they don't read sheet music, right? That
yeah,
or maybe they can read chord charts or something, but a lot of times it's very interesting that really advanced musicians, or really awesome musicians, don't necessarily know how to sheet read. And
yeah,
the classical musicians I've talked to actually find that the sheet reading actually sometimes prevents them from doing what singer-songwriters do. But because they're
yeah.
so tied to it that when somebody tells them to improvise, they're not as willing to do it as people who naturally improvise. So
In
I think it's
my
kinda interesting.
Yeah, in my university, I had a teacher who told me, now you come here, you put your full effort into this, you get good, then you go out in the world and you forget about everything that we ever taught you, and then you make your own thing. And that's what I really strongly believe in, is that you can learn from masters, and then you understand where the bar is, what you're even
Yeah.
involving yourself into, and then you forget about the things that have been done and make your own. Of course there always will be influences, but that's what makes it great. Like that's what the creation is about.
Well, that's why I think what's really fantastic, about music is, I like to do things that are kind of cross genre. So if you
Mm-hmm.
notice, my Instagram's called Expansive Sound. It's like, what's that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that means I can play jazz one night, I can play punk, I can play rock, I can do whatever I want. Because I'm not trying to
Yeah,
say I'm not just a DJ. I'm not just an electronic musician. If I
yeah,
want to go play Johnny Cash, if I want to go play something that sounds like The Clash, or then
yeah,
go play Sun Ra or Miles Davis, I can do whatever I want. I don't put any constraints. And I think that's what's cool today, unless you put yourself in a box. Like if you go say, I'm only trap, I'm only
yeah,
EDM, then you put yourself in a box. It's like you could just say,
yeah,
well, I'm just gonna do music.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And if I do music, then one day I could collaborate with a rapper. Next day I could collaborate with an R&B guy or a soul person or a country or what or heavy metal
yeah,
or whatever. Because if I feel like doing Nine Inch Nails type of music, I can do it. If I feel like doing like Yes or Genesis, I could go do it. I don't want to be constrained. That's why I think
yeah,
it's cool today that there is a lot of cross genre. There's a lot of
yeah.
people mixing things up. And that's where things happen. That's what I find is like that's where the music is really happening in the underground where
Mm-hmm.
people decide I'm gonna break the rule. I'm not just gonna do the drop, right? I'm not
Yeah,
just gonna have this disco structure. I'm gonna mix structures. I'm gonna change keys. I'm gonna change
mm-hmm.
timing. I'm gonna do polyrhythms. I'm not always gonna try to be perfect in the DAW. I'm
Yeah,
actually gonna allow the happy accidents.
yeah.
You know, that to me is that's how you grow.
Exactly. I absolutely agree. I think that like people are so afraid of like failing and like doing these mistakes. And let's say if 90% of your failure is failure and it's cringe and it's
Yeah.
whatever weird, but the 10% that you actually take the risk to be cringe, you might actually figure out something new, and that is so valuable. So and also through these things you learn. So I absolutely think that failing is so big part of all of it, and like it should shouldn't be like you shouldn't be afraid of it, and you shouldn't think that, oh yeah, I need to be perfect at everything, because there's no such thing.
Well, that's why I think I get scared with the DAW and I become a
Mm-hmm.
DAW-less producer because I found a lot of producers being so tied to the BPM. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, I had a story where somebody came to me and they liked my sound and they said they wanted to work. And I said, well, I don't work in a DAW. I work with hardware.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to work with me, understand that. And then when we were working, they kept on saying, well, you're not in time with my DAW. I said, well, I'm never going to be in time with your DAW. I'm never
Yeah,
gonna do it because I don't use it. I'm like Keith Richards. I'm gonna
yeah.
play off beat because that's what I like to do. All my stuff,
Yeah,
you heard it, right? I don't always do the right timing, but that's the happy accident
yeah,
because I'm more jazz influenced, right? So a lot of my stuff will change timing or not be fully steady because it's kind of evolving. or it's
Yeah.
polyrhythmic, and say that's a choice, and that's kind of like the choice Keith Richards chose to do when he plays. He's very off the time, but it
Yeah.
sounds wonderful, and there's tons of happy accidents in Stone songs. There's tons of
Yeah.
happy accidents in a lot of stuff in the '70s. If you listen to albums in the '70s and you try to track it, it won't track that good in the DAW because there's like a
Mhm.
lot of timing changes that they're all over the place. And I'm like, well, that's the whole like beauty of that music.
Mhm.
you know?
I also think that hardware gives like this human touch to electronical music. Uh, that's
Yeah.
that's really valuable,
Well, I think
definitely.
like a lot of times it's like I love Moogs, not just because
Mhm.
they're a Moog, but like Bob Moog who invented it. He said that he felt they were living things. And
Mhm.
I have like 3 of them, and they are kind of like living instruments because every day I turn one on, it doesn't behave the same. And it actually drives my creative process because it sounds different like every day. Not that I can't get it to where it was, but when I turn
Mhm.
it on, it just presents to me something different. And then I
Mhm.
kind of like instead of trying to tame it, what I found
Yeah.
is like I let it talk to me, right? So I let him talk to me, and I said, "Well, that's what I'm gonna do today, because that's what it
Yeah.
sounds like today, so that's where I'm gonna go with what it's given me." And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard to tell somebody in the digital world what that's like because they're kinda like, "Well, I just got this," and I was like, "Okay, but I'm
Yeah.
going like this way." You know?
Yeah, that's also what I really like about synths is that I like to play around with them, and when I achieve a sound that I'm like inspired by it, then I'm like, oh, I want to add this thing to it and this thing to it, and then it's like endless spiral.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like sound design in itself is like art.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing
yeah,
about people
definitely.
forgot about electronic music is the original electronic musicians, they didn't even have keyboards. The
Yeah.
original synths, like the early Moogs and like the ARPs, they were just these big machines that had tons of dials and tons of CV, and I still have a bunch of stuff that's like that with CV. It's like a telephone
Hmm.
patch system, and the thing about it was like you could break the rules because modern synths have a structure and you can maybe break it behind the scenes, but these hardware synths, you can actually change the workflow
Hmm.
and force it to do something it wasn't initially going to do.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's true.
And that's where the beauty is, where you can continually keep on. If you like a lot of musicians, like a punk rocker, it's like a punk aesthetic. Like you're gonna break the rules, like the Ramones
Yeah,
or the Clash or the Sex Pistols. You're gonna break it because that's what you want to do, and then that
yeah,
instrument allows you to do it in the same way like rock guitarists did with like the stomp boxes
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
and the distorted heavy guitars is like, okay, we're gonna break the rules and do sounds that people used to EQ out.
yeah.
Because like Hendrix, when he first did what he did, all his engineers said, "Well, you can't do that." Yeah, you're like all tons of his engineers when he started introducing all the feedback said, "We're not supposed to put that on the record." And he's like, and he started
Hmm.
running the board himself because they kept
Yeah,
on taking stuff out, and he said, "I don't want it out. That's what I want.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
sound I want in." And I
Hmm.
think that's when you get people who are kind of ahead of the curve, like a Hendrix. It's like the people in his time were like, "Oh, you can't do that," and it's like, "No,
Hmm.
that's what we should do." you
Yeah,
know?
I think that it's actually even in people who only produce on different DAWs, they also, and I also, because I do both, I
Mhm.
think that it's cool to use some plugins wrong way. So you also
Yeah,
get this like
break the rules.
distorted sound. Yeah, exactly. It's you have to know the rules to break them.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta know what it should be and then say, "Well, I wanna
Yeah,
go
yeah,
and
yeah.
do, like, turn something inside out." Like,
Mhm.
I started playing with analog
Mhm.
modular samplers because then what you can do to the sample, you don't even see it, right? You take
Mhm.
a sample and you put it into a Eurorack device, and you can't visually see it, right? But you can take it and then affect it with controlled voltage. You can make an oscillator affect it, you can
Yeah.
make a random voltage generator affect it. So when you do that without looking at it, right,
Mhm.
you can cause things to happen
Yeah.
that are totally unexpected. And
Mhm.
that is where to me is like I'd rather not look at the computer screen when I'm playing with a sample and run it through like an analog work chain, because
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you can deviate it so much that you'll never even get hit with the copyright, because you
yeah.
change so nobody can even trace what it was.
Yeah,
And that's the way to do it, in my opinion.
yeah.
Then you don't even get hit because you're like you just totally ripped it up. Um,
Mhm,
and you weren't trying to keep it. Like I wasn't trying to get it to be like Ice Ice Baby. I
mhm.
actually want to turn it into something from another world like Mars. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want it to be what you heard. I want it
yeah.
to actually take something and make it unrecognizable. But
Mhm,
so like we're talking about influences and reference points. Who would you say are the people that inspired you with your style? I mean, or maybe you just have a multiple people that do that, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Definitely. For me, I don't think that I have a certain style. I also see that my what I make is influenced by everything that I enjoy, which is hip hop, electronical music, and also pop music. And that's mainly what I grew up on.
Mhm.
Since in my family there wasn't really that much of music listening. Instead, like only music listening was on our way to school in a car. So
Oh,
I always listened to radio. So pop was always
main thing.
something that I grew up on. But as I grew older and I got access to music, I really started enjoying dubstep and drumstep and also rap music and hip hop. And I fell in love with like the way of artists writing lyrics. So, for example, I really started respecting Kendrick Lamar. And
Mhm.
for example, completely different inspiration I find from Doja Cat, which I think that she's, of course, very, very popular artist right now. But what I love about her is her authenticity. When I was writing my music still on guitar, wasn't producing it. Then I stumbled on Doja Cat's Spotify. No, no, no,
Or
SoundCloud.
SoundCloud?
SoundCloud.
Yeah, she started,
Yes.
like, on the underground in SoundCloud, I
Yeah,
think.
exactly. And but she kept her stuff up there, and I found it. And to me, to hear the like previous versions of the now hit songs,
Mhm.
it really like inspired me to also like show my process and not try to be perfect all the time, because that's the thing. Like now she has a whole team of people who
Yeah,
help
she got a
her
big
to
production team, yeah, she got, like, a famous
exactly.
producer, but I
Yeah,
actually really like her SoundCloud work, because, like,
yeah.
it's something I like emerging artists. I started, like, again, I'm 54, I was, like, a radio
Hmm.
DJ that
Hmm.
played a lot of underground college radio, like, back in the day, in the early '80s, like REM and The Cure and, New
Hmm.
Order, and I was always going for, like, bands like Placements and who's everything that was, like, in the under
Yeah,
I would read Rolling Stone and Spin, and if I found, like, an emerging band that nobody liked
yeah,
or nobody heard of, I would play it because,
yeah,
like, that's what I like. I like to find the new stuff, and, but
yeah,
I like Doja Cat early work because it was really good, and it was like, I didn't see that coming, and I'm like, this
yeah,
her songwriting technique is like, it was songwriting.
yeah,
There's some people
exactly.
today, like, they don't write necessarily in a songwriting style. They
Yeah,
write, like, in hooks and clips,
yeah.
and they think they've forgotten kinda like the Beatlesque or like the Pink Floyds of the world, or even like the Zeppelins. Like, there's a song structure that was
Hmm.
prevalent, and now because you've got these clip-based machines in the DAWs, some people are just building, like, hook-based songs that don't
Yeah.
have all the bridges and, the outros and the intros that you used to get. And I've always been, like,
Hmm.
very into people who still structure in
Hmm.
that kind of typical song structure. Not that there are other ways, because hip hop is different.
Hmm.
But then with Kendrick Lamar, he actually took hip hop and started introducing pop ideas. and
Mm-hmm.
jazz ideas. So it is this kind of expansive thing because when you listen to
Mm-hmm.
Butterfly, it's got jazz, it's got like live instrumentation, it's got samples mixed with, Dylan-esque type of structure. Like a lot of rap is kind of like Dylan, and it's got very deep like songwriting that you can get from like a Neil Young or a Bob Dylan. And I was always very impressed because I liked, Dylan and Neil Young, and rap has that. Like if you go into rap,
Mm-hmm.
it's very dense with the lyrics, like
Mm-hmm.
tone. Very that to me is kind of where rock has kind of not gone where it used to be, and it's kind of lost that. Um, and that's why I think people like hip hop because it's kind of reminding them. I mean, you've got rock operas. I mean, you've got concept albums and rap albums. You got
Yeah, yeah.
multi rap acts that actually can get people to listen to a full 70-minute album, not just the single. People will listen to the whole thing. And then on popular music,
Yeah.
that's not happening. It's like, why? It used to happen. You used to be able to listen to the whole Queen album or the whole Sgt. Pepper album. Now
Mm-hmm.
people just listen to one song. But in hip hop, they actually get people to listen to the full record.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. That's why I always tell people, it's like, well, you can't get people to do that. Yes, you can. Different genres, people are still listening to the whole record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am also deeply in love with making albums. Like I feel this uh, with the single, it's such a short amount of time to tell anything. I think it's like these parts of like ideas, but if it's an album or if it's a bigger concept, then you can give a full story, like full perspective, full idea of all of the different ways you can like interpret it. So I really really enjoy albums and EPs and all that sort of stuff. I think that this insane boom of putting out singles is also due to marketing,
Yeah,
honestly.
so Mark, it kind of reminds me like we've kind of gone full circle. If you go back to the 1950s and
Mm-hmm.
you look at Motown and Stax, those machines, like those record companies would put singles out like every week, tons of them. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, to the
Yeah.
point where multiple bands would take the same song and run it. Like the Temptations would do a version, the Four Tops would do a version, the Supremes would do a version, Stevie Wonder would do a version, and if it didn't work, that they
Mm-hmm.
would roll it to another band, right? So they would just continually putting out material, and they say, okay, this doesn't work. Okay, this didn't work. Okay, they just kept on experimenting, but they continually put stuff out, and the albums were really more like collections of greatest hits, where they
Mm-hmm.
would take the singles that did well and then make an album until you
Yeah.
finally get like Stevie Wonder and some of the other bands like in the actually like if you think you think about Marvin Gaye, they actually started to create albums that had like the concept, like what's going on is a classic album structure.
Mm-hmm.
Songs in the Key of Life from Stevie. That's a song structure. It's a full
Mm-hmm.
concept. But before that, the Temptation and the Four Top albums and the Supreme albums, they really weren't like that. They were just like collections of hits.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it seems like today that's kind of what's going on with playlists in singles. People are just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and say, well, does that work? Does that work? And it's very short. And the thing that people are missing is you don't get introduced to the full work of an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you get into an album, the deeper tracks kind of show you who that artist is. If
Yeah.
you're the non-singles, the songs that aren't the singles, are kind of show you the depth of an artist. And I was always a big fan of the deeper cuts
Mm-hmm.
of artists, the songs that aren't the single.
Yeah.
I think that tells you a lot about who they are.
Yeah, but I also would like draw a parallel in a way that like I think that music as an art has a different purpose this like today as maybe used to have back in the day. Like for example, also with art, like people used to paint and then photography came and it like got into a whole different meaning of what it is. And I
Mhm.
think it's the same way, like this music that is marketed for like TikTok and for this short clips or the music that you actually go to like search meaning from is like a bit separated, like the same way that you go to an art gallery and you think like, oh, what does this painting mean? You know, you don't do the same thing, for example, with every poster you see in the street.
Yeah, I think what happens is you do get, I think the real like music aficionados, the people who are really into records, right? So you get the music fan that will
Hmm.
actually buy like your full record because
Yeah.
they like to be introduced to new material. They like to listen to the
Hmm.
whole thing, right? And then you got the casual music fan that's just doing it to listen to something while they're, commuting or
Hmm.
they're jogging or they're
Yeah.
working, right? And they can't listen to Pink Floyd and really pay attention because they're trying to work. So they're
Yeah.
just looking for something catchy. So they're using it in a commercial way for a different purpose than what somebody
Yeah.
like me and my friends would go take a Pink Floyd album and go to the basement and put it on the record player on vinyl and then, in the dark listen to the whole thing. you know,
Yeah.
it's a different type of purpose. Like
Yeah.
people are, there's still people that do that. There are people buying vinyl again and they are listening to people's full projects.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a different set, and then okay, maybe there's only 10,000 people or 1,000 people for different levels that will do that.
Hmm.
And so you can kind of micro market to those audiences, and that's why I think a lot of us indie artists are finding ways. I've marketed small vinyl batches to my peg fans, and it works
Hmm.
because I'm not trying to sell 100,000.
Yeah.
I do it like 1,000, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
And so it's possible to do it, and you actually can make more money than I make on Spotify all year from 1,000.
Yeah, that's a whole topic. Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
whole
yeah.
different thing, but I was like,
Mhm.
there's a way to actually get the fans something and
Yeah.
do, to me, I like vinyl because you can do a whole picture, you can do the liner notes, it's a whole
Yeah.
project. You can go work with a photographer or another
Yeah.
artist, and then you're doing a combined project. So that kind of gets to like
Mhm.
collaboration. Do you like
Yeah.
to work like you're working with the film directors that are
Yeah.
working on your video? Do you like to work with artists for like the album cover and
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, also photographers help me with taking pictures for my projects, and the same way that I love to create art, I also respect other people's art. So there is after now there is on Tuesday this single coming up, which
yeah?
is also in collaboration with the photographer. There's also the music video, and then there's one bigger secret project that is coming out, and with that there is some AI art,
Oh, cool.
and this is also made by someone else, not like an AI artist. So I'm really excited for that, and yeah, I absolutely love collaborating with others because I think that although I have a lot of ideas, I get so inspired by other people, like their way of thinking, their way of like going into things. So with not only other stuff, but also with music, I really enjoy the way that someone else's way of seeing the same thing completely differently is so like it helps me expand my own perspective in a way.
Yeah, that's kind of like I've had I'm a solo artist most of the time, but I do have had bands where I've
Mm-hmm.
had, physical drummers, guitar
Mm-hmm.
players, bass players, other keyboardists. And the cool thing about, being in band, is I'm
Mm-hmm.
a primary songwriter usually in any band I was in. And
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see like what the bass player did to my bass part. Like I would come in with
Yeah.
the bass part, I would come in with like a drum machine and give it to the drummer. I'm like, I know you
Yeah.
can do better than what my 808 is doing. The
Yeah.
808, the 808 has a character and we could use it, but if you
Mm-hmm.
go and create a beat that's inspired from this, you're gonna do things that a drummer can do that the
Yes.
808 can't do, right? So I
Yes.
know
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and I would like let it go. So I would go to the band, it's like, here's the big demo, but I
Yeah.
want my bass player take that bass part and like take it over. Take the drum
Exactly.
part, take it over. Another guitar player like change the chords a little bit, change to different structures, and like that's what I was fun because
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of like, just make it better. right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do exactly what I did. I'm not going to sit
Yeah.
there and rehearse you and make you play exactly what I did in the demo.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
want you to kind of take it and give something back to me that's better.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about playing in bands is like bands when you're a unit that kind of happens. So when you're a solo artist, usually your producer or you have other
Mm-hmm.
collaborators to help you do that. So do you just work with your producer or other collaborators like when you put your stuff together, your songs?
I produce my music myself, and
Mhm.
then I now that prior I didn't really have that many connections in music, but during the time that I've been doing it more, now the projects that are coming out will have some songs that have also real played instruments like guitar and drums
Cool.
and this type of stuff. So I'm super excited for it, and that's that's exactly how I feel like I can put all of these things together in my DAW, but at the same time, when there's someone who puts hours and hours in perfecting their one instrument, like they're
Yeah.
obviously gonna
Yeah.
have
They're
so
gonna
much more magic in their what they're doing, you know.
Yeah, just
So
like just learn how to play cymbals and hi-hats, like what drummers can do with
yeah.
cymbals and hi-hats that they maybe programmatically I could do something extra interesting. But if you got a guy that's been the drummer for like 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
what he can come up with just by hearing my
Mm-hmm.
chord changes is like fantastic. And that's why I
Yeah.
always like love playing with live drummers. Even
Mm-hmm.
as a keyboardist, I would like turn my drum machines off. And it's like because if I can play with a live drummer, he's gonna do stuff that it's kinda like jazz to me, and, like, I like to play
Yeah.
kind of fusion jazz with drummers and bass players, and we just kinda go off, and we,
Mm-hmm.
we'll come back to central themes like a typical jazz outfit, but, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I love about fusion is, like, the fact that you can go off and kinda solo and kinda get punky and then,
Yeah.
have some central, like, part that we all practice and we have that central thing, but then we can have
Yeah.
go off and solo and then come back, and it's just really fun. And,
Mm-hmm.
we can have a general idea that we rehearsed, but then, if I feel like, you know, just playing something out of nowhere, everybody just kind of goes with it. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter because we're kind of like, okay, that's just the nature of music. And to me, it's those happy accidents again that that's what's fantastic
Mm-hmm.
about the whole process of creation in terms of music. I think it's just that's why you do it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if I made any money. I mean, really, like, 'cause I try to do what's gonna, do okay, but
Yeah.
most of it is because of what, it feels like playing, like, I'm addicted to playing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I think that drums especially like it's the make it or break it for a song, and I think that when I got into production in a way that I also did some band things, but I felt like writing on a guitar isn't the same for me. Like it's always the same. It's kind of like limiting me in a way. Like I enjoy it, but I felt like I want to create sounds that I never have before. I want to like put it together in a different way. I want to create drops. I want to like do
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. So I completely 100% admire all of these other instrumentalists and like all the people who have put years and years in like perfecting this one specific thing.
Well, I
Yeah.
think what's cool about the DAW is it brings you kinda into the studio, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you've got all the tools that used to be on the big boards at Olympic Studios, at these big studios, you've got the same kind of tools. You got all the compressors, you got all the
Mm-hmm.
effects. You can run backward stuff. You can run analog instruments into it. You can run, other instruments into it. You can use software instruments and do, bring a string section in that, you would have had to hire a string to play it or
Mm-hmm.
play a mellotron to try to get it. So now you can actually. That's what's cool. That's why I became a keyboardist. Cause I was a woodwind guy, right? I'm playing clarinets and saxes. Like, well, I can't write. I could write jazz songs, but I couldn't write like pop songs. So I
Mhm.
said I needed something to write. So I got a piano. And then I said, well, I'm kind of limited. I'm just going to be writing like Carole King and Billy Joel,
Mhm.
John. Not that it's bad, but like I want to be able to do other instruments. Then that's when I found synthesizers. I said, well,
Mhm.
I get a
Mhm.
synthesizer, like one of these Rolands. I can actually, the whole thing about being a synthesist is you just don't try to play a keyboard like a piano player. You learn
Yeah.
how to play a bass like a bass player. You go learn to
Yeah.
play a flute like a flute player. You learn to play the drums like a drummer. You learn to do the strings like an orchestra. Like so you become that
Yeah.
other instrument. And you
Yeah.
have to learn the techniques like the trills or the breaths that you have to take. Like, okay, if I'm taking a woodwind, I can't just keep on playing without a breath. I've
Yeah.
got to actually introduce the breaths. I've got to
Yeah.
introduce the aspects of that instrument, and that's what's fun about being a synthesist is like trying to actually replicate those native instruments on something that's not.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what I mean, DAWs do it now. I mean, before that, because I'm a child of the '70s, the synthesizer was the DAW.
Mhm.
A music workstation like an M1 or like, like a Phantom, that was what we did. We didn't have a DAW. We would use a Phantom or a Kronos or something like that. And now because there's a DAW, you don't have to do that. But I'm still
Mhm.
living in that world and I like it. um,
Yeah.
but because I like the hardware, but that's just me. Um,
Yeah, but I feel like it's a completely different way of playing still, because even if you kind of understand the way to make your, let's say, drums sound as natural as you can in your DAW, then for example, the drummer who has done 10 years of drumming comes and tries to do the drums in a DAW and it sounds not good at all, which is strange because the technique is completely different, but like,
yeah, you can actually do
yeah.
things that kind of like what George Martin said. The studio becomes like a sound painting, and you can do things
Mm-hmm.
like you said. I'm not the Beatles aren't just sounding like they did in Berlin live. They're
Mm-hmm.
doing things that you can't actually reproduce live. I mean, there's backward
Yeah,
tape loops,
yeah.
there's all this layering
Mhm.
that that you can't
Yeah,
reproduce. That's like the studio version of the song
exactly. Yeah.
is totally different than the live version of the song. And I'm
Mhm.
cool with that. Like, I'm not sometimes I'm like, I don't wanna just replicate what I did in the studio when I go play
Yeah.
live. I don't necessarily wanna run all my backing tracks. I will actually create a live version that's actually playable, that I don't have
Yeah.
to have all this other stuff happening because, like, this is the live version, it's different than the studio version. Studio version, I could do all these things. When I
Yeah,
go live,
exactly.
it's like I can only do this much, and I'm not
Mhm.
gonna bring those backing tracks, so I don't wanna get locked in to what I originally wrote, so I'm gonna just interpret it in a different way.
Yeah. I think that's something when I started producing that didn't really think about was that how is this gonna sound live? Am I really going to say that out loud like all these
Yeah.
things that I didn't really think about prior.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just like, I am in my room making my own music, like I
Yeah.
say what I want to say and I make what I want to make and I put everything that I want and I make the drop as loud as I want and I 808s rip so hard that literally my heart goes out of beat. But
Mhm.
then I like realized that actually like it's not only about what I want to put into it. It's also you really need to like think about what people get out of it,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because otherwise there's no point of even like releasing your music if you're only doing it in a perspective of I want to say this and I want to do this and all this stuff.
Which yeah,
But
it's kinda like the punk thing, like the punk
yeah, yeah,
perspective is like a punk band can come out and they can be screaming and yelling
yeah,
and whatever, but it's like, is it really kicking over?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
even like when the Clash first started, they were like a real punk band. It was like
yeah,
they were
yeah,
punk.
yeah, yeah.
Then what
Uh,
did they become? They actually started to craft other like had Caribbean and African rhythms, that had hip hop rhythms. They started to actually structure things that were more listenable. By the time you get to combat
yeah,
rock, it's got like pop sensibilities, even though it's punk.
yeah.
It started to
I
get to a point where you actually could, it's a song.
mhm.
Not just a punk song, but it's actually a popular radio song.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the punk attitude. I think that I took it very hard from the music I was doing prior, and
Mhm.
now I think that I have started to make music that is, it has the meaning, which is the most important to me, but it's delivered in a more refined way. Because, you know, like as you make things anyway, you get better at them, you get more skill, you get more like mindful about what you're doing. So I definitely am excited for the things that now are gonna come out, and I'm really excited to hopefully start performing them. And yeah, super
But I think it's
exciting.
really cool to kind of merge like a punk aesthetic, right,
Mm-hmm.
with a kind of pop sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where you get the highest level of that was like Kurt Cobain, right? Like Kurt Cobain was basically he was doing like Ramones like punk, but then he mixed like Beatle esque like lyrical definition. If you look at Nirvana songs, they've got like a lot of Beatle like structures to them in terms of even the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of it's grunge, but if you look at it, it's got a lot of Beatles in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like Beatle chords. It's got like lyrics that are like John Lennon like lyrics, and you're like, that's not just punk. It's like something else. So he kind of took it that punk aesthetic, and then was able to kind of come into it and create the grunge. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably the best definition of grunge is Nirvana. But it's just unbelievably dense. There's a lot to it, and so you can take that, and then you could go like electronic with it. You get like a Trent Reznor. You get like a Nine Inch Nails, and he's got very interesting things that have this aggressive punk thing, but he's doing it with sense. And
Mm-hmm.
that was always big inspiration for to me because like a lot of sense can be very poppy, and be very,
Mm-hmm.
very pleasing to the ears. But
Mm-hmm.
when Trent goes at it, he kind of takes a punk like it's like I'm gonna make it heavy and hard,
Yeah.
gritty and obnoxious, and
Yeah.
that's kind of I like that being able to kind of the middle ground is being able to get
Mm-hmm.
that pop audience to like it.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That I think is something that is like in heart of all of the artists, is that like I want to create my art, but at the same time, like, is it marketable? Like, if I do what I like, how can I do things that I really believe in a way that I don't have to like go and have another and another job where I put all of my time in, where I like, so to find a balance between of delivering your message and doing what you love, and at the same time not like completely like wasting yourself in everything else, is like finding the balance really hard, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just like what I found is like, as a musician, I started getting into podcasting as a way
Mm-hmm.
to help support. And what's interesting is like it's like I said, when people say, "Well, then you're taking away from how much time you can put into your music." I said, "Well,
Mm.
like being a musician, being able to talk to other musicians is a
Mm-hmm.
core thing about being a musician, right?" So
Yeah.
every time I get to talk to another musician, it helps me with my music. So it's worth taking the time out of writing a ghost song or a peg song to talk to somebody like you and get a
Mm-hmm.
different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can take that and it's like, oh, that's a different way to look at something, and I
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it every week. I'm hearing different bands. I'm
Yeah.
listening to what you're doing, and then like that inspires me in itself. Not that I'm going to clone what you're doing, but the fact that I'm outside of my own
Yeah.
head, that I'm actually
Exactly.
listening to other people. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's core to being a musician is to actually experience as much music from other people,
Yeah.
and you grow as a musician by connecting with other musicians.
Exactly, 100% agree. That's why I also love collaborating. So maybe next week you can see my podcast popping up randomly, so I can also.
It's a really I've actually got other artists have, I've interviewed have actually kicked off their own.
Really?
Yeah, just because it is a growing form,
Yeah, it's
and
really great idea though.
it does help how it helps push your brand, even if you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
your own music. If
Yeah, I
you
get it.
branch out I had a guy, he was like he's making cookies. He was
Mm-hmm.
like showing how bad he played golf. He would just doing
Yeah.
quirky things, not like TikTok exactly, but
Mm-hmm.
having another way for fans to see you
Yeah.
is kinda cool. It's kinda like what
Yeah.
if you think about, like, the Monkees or you think about the Beatles with Help, people being able to see a band
Mm-hmm.
in a different way
Yeah.
is not a bad idea for marketing. And
Yeah.
in fact, it actually gives you a longer form to
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
music on because like where you're on a Spotify playlist, you got 2 minutes. You get on a
Mm-hmm.
podcast, you could have a half hour or an hour, and then suddenly
Yeah.
your content could be on something that is way longer and can reach more people for a longer
Yeah.
period of time. So it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like collaborating, I think we talked about that, but, have you, thought about, like being in somebody else's band or doing a feature for another band or totally different like
Mm-hmm.
genre?
Yeah. In totally different genre. I haven't really, but I'm always down for a challenge. So if anyone needs a top liner, here I am. But that's what I usually do. Yeah, I when people reach out to me, I can write the top lines for them and do those things. And also I yeah, collaborate with other artists myself too. Like
Oh, you've
right,
worked on, there are projects like your features on that?
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. Also,
That
I really enjoy producing for other artists in a way that when I started producing, I was like, okay, I want to create my own music. I want to share it. I want to make it my own.
Mhm,
I tried to like rap on BeatStars beats, and then I was like, okay, these are like very like always the same, so I want to make my own.
mhm.
So, but now I didn't think that it was going to be in a way that, oh, I enjoy producing for other artists too, and especially like understanding what they want and trying to create it for them, and understanding who they want to seem as, or who they want to be, or who or what is that defines them, is really like interesting for me to like also do for them. I think it's really special thing.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that musicians can do is like, guest playing, like being a synth player, I can go and play parts on somebody else's record, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can go, add a Moog bass line to somebody that needs it,
Mm-hmm.
or add some pads, some expansive like Jupiter 8 like pads, or
Mm-hmm.
some kind of Prophet 5 heavy kind of 90s new wave sound. Somebody wants it and they want to sound like that, and then you need
Mm-hmm.
a keyboard player to do that. That's the kind of stuff that you can do. And then also the other thing is like not like top lines too, but being a synthesis is we can do ads. We can do 30 seconds commercials
Mm-hmm.
when somebody needs
Yeah.
music for a commercial. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily, people ever know that I did it because it might be just
Yeah.
my regular legal name, but
Yeah.
it's a way
Yeah.
to have a source of income as a musician, as a working musician
Yeah.
doing like advertising and film pieces
Yeah.
just for a couple minutes here and there for a scene. You can do
Mm-hmm.
very well as a
Yeah.
musician, and maybe you don't get to put your brand on it, but you can
Mm-hmm.
use it to pay for your own projects.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you know
Sound design is definitely another thing that really like for commercials and that type of stuff is really exciting to me. I think it's super fun. Like if you look at this like created action of this little clip, and you're like, oh, how I'm gonna make this sound like putting your brain in a situation of trying to make realistic sounds with non-realistic things, for example, is
yeah,
really cool.
it's kind of like the old 1950s science fiction movies are full of these Moog,
Yeah, yeah,
your UFO sounds. They go, ooh,
yeah,
these
yeah,
synthesizers,
yeah.
that's what they do, so somebody wants to hear that kind of weird UFO thing and they want
Hmm.
special effects. They want to sound like R2D2. That's what my all my synths can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can do special effects for like filmmakers and stuff. So they're
Hmm.
looking to do like, ocean and wind, and they don't want to
Hmm.
grab a tape loop because they don't want to get hit with somebody's infringement. They'll come to a synthesis
Yeah.
to do it. and then
Yeah.
you can do a lot of cool stuff. So I think it's like it's wide open because you have to think about, I think, what you can do, not what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And you just find that there's a lot of opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
like, be out there and music. Not you're trying to be a big superstar, but I think a lot of what we do is because we love it, and if you love it, then things kind of come to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
like if you're very passionate, then people feel your passion, right? And then they're like, whoa, this person's really into this. Maybe we should check them out because they're so into themselves, they're into the confidence of it, right? That they
Mm-hmm.
feel that you have something, then people will say, well, yeah, they do, right? And then you start to build an audience because people will find, I find that people find you, around the world,
Mm-hmm.
people looking for something different. So just
Yeah.
because you don't sound like what's in the top 10 doesn't mean you can't go out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope you're right. Yeah.
Well, it's
That.
just a different way to think of it.
Yeah. 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 That's true. I also like want to think like that, and I really hope that people through my music see who I am, and I also really like to connect to my audience. So I really hope that uh, just by being yourself is enough, you know.
Well, I think
Yeah.
everybody's got their own unique vision, that you've got
Yeah.
your Rara Blue vision, I got
Mm-hmm.
my peg vision. Every band I've ever
Yeah.
talked to has that kind of motif. So,
Mm-hmm.
so this single, is this part of a bigger project? I know you mentioned AI. Is it part of like
Yes.
an EP or an album?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There is some more going. I'm not gonna reveal all of this, but there is a bigger thing coming after this. But first, go on this link and
It's the first
hyper
one.
follow the single, and then
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
watch the music video because that's also super exciting. And then
yeah.
there's gonna
Well,
be the
you got
full
to start.
story.
Yeah, you have to start. I think like you have to kind of have the hook and get people into
Yeah.
it and get them into the Rare Blue like world,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just like
Yeah.
try to get people in the peg world. That's how I try to get to get people to listen to me when I interview people and artists. They're
Yeah.
different every week. I try to bring them into our channels. Make sure they subscribe to our YouTube.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, and one thing I think people forget is like it doesn't take a lot of time, but I would just suggest to anybody who watches and listens to the people I interview, please make sure you subscribe everywhere on the social media where you find the artist like Rara Blue. Like if you're on the YouTube, subscribe if they're on the YouTube. Subscribe on make sure you hit the likes, you download, you subscribe where you can, you purchase, not just stream,
Yeah.
because that shows the support of an artist in the same way YouTubers get people to support them. We
Mhm.
need people to support musicians. People just think musicians are running
Yeah.
around in limos and stuff, and it's not like that anymore.
Especially these times that we're going through right
Yeah,
now, like when there's not as much shows that all of those things are restricted, like it's really needed to support all of the artists.
yeah, yeah,
So they
sure.
wouldn't quit and get a fully day job, you know?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
Like make sure that we don't have to, have like 3 day jobs.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like if
exactly.
you subscribe and you download and you, especially like in a place like a YouTube, is like if that is very important to hit that subscribe button. I don't know
Yeah.
how much anywhere you can find a subscribe button and the artist is there, make sure you hit it because it's very
Yeah.
important. So I just wanted to thank you for being on the show. It's been really great. And to let everybody know, this will be on Spotify video podcast. If you didn't know, Spotify has a new program for podcasters, and our podcast is one of the video podcasts that's there. And it'll be there within an hour. It will also be on Apple Podcast as audio, and we're on actually Twitter right now. So that's one of the new things that we started doing. So thank you very much for being on the show, and we appreciate it. And when your album drops, let us know. We like to have people come back.
Yes.
And if you ever want to get into our festival, we're going to do another one in July where we have every guest who's ever been on the podcast. We ask them to be part of our bedroom producer festivals, And we just had our second one last week, and we're going to do a third one this year in July.
Thank you for inviting me, and I really, really hope that although my Instagram got restricted, then I really hope that the people who care for my music and like everything that I do, that they still like got to come here and listen to what I have to say. And also, yeah, thank you, and subscribe and keep the artist alive. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you again.
All right.